Time for convening having arrived. The Senate will come to order. Chair recognizes Senator from the 54th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The journal has been read and found to be correct.
Thank you, Senator, for your good works on the journal. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators having bills and resolutions introduced, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 539 by Senator Staten of the 18th and
Regulated
others.
Industries.
Senate Resolution 1242 by Senator Rogers
Rules
of the 21st.
Committee.
Senate Resolution 1243 by Senator Rogers of the 21st.
Transportation.
Senate Resolution 1253 by Senator...
Regulated Industries.
Through the order, Mr. President.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions.
House Bill 1275 by Representative Stevens of the 164th and
Slow
others.
go.
House Bill 1281 by
Slow
Representative...
go.
House Bill 1282 by
Slow
Representative...
go.
House Bill 1283 by Representative Hatfield of
Slow
the...
go.
7th. House Bill 1284 by Representative Smith of the 168th.
State and local governmental operations.
House Bill 1285 by Representative Smith of the 168th.
State and local governmental operations.
House Bill 1286 by Representative Morris of the
State and local
155th.
governmental operations.
House Bill 1287 by Representative Morris of the 155th. Bill to be
Slow
entitled.
go.
House Bill 1291 by Representative Wilkinson of the
Slow go.
52nd. House Bill 1293 by Representative Hardin of the 147th. Bill to be entitled an act to
Slow
amend an
go.
act. House Bill 1294 by Representative Maddox of the 127th.
Slow go.
House Bill 1295 by Representative Hardin of the
State and local
20.
governmental operations.
House Bill 1296 by
State
Representative
and
Hardin.
local governmental operations.
House Bill 1297 by Representative Sims
State
of
and
the
local governmental
169th.
operations.
House Bill 1299 by Representative
State and
Jenner.
local governmental operations.
House Bill 1301 by
State
Representative.
and local governmental operations.
Through the order, Mr. President.
Secretary will read bills for the second time.
No.
Or committee reports.
Mr. President, the Senate Finance Committee has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 334 do pass by substitute. House Bill 808 do pass. House Bill 818 do pass by substitute. House Bill 896 do Pass by substitute. House Resolution 1150 do pass by substitute. House Bill 450 do pass by substitute. House Bill 318 do pass by substitute. House Bill 743 do pass by substitute. House Bill 846 do pass. House Bill 851 do pass by substitute. House Bill 934 do pass by substitute. House Bill 965 do pass by substitute. House Bill 1027 do pass by substitute. House Bill 1056 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Heath, the 31st District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Health and Human Services Committee has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Resolution 104 do pass by substitute. Senate Resolution 828 do pass. Senate Resolution 834 do pass. Senate Resolution 979 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Unterman, the 45th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Insurance and Labor Committee has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 347 do pass by substitute. House Bill 640 do pass. House Bill 1067 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Goggins of the 7th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Judiciary Committee has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 534 do pass. House Bill 940 do pass. Senate Resolution 1217 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Hamrick of the 30th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Reapportionment and Redistricting Committee has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 923 do pass by substitute. House Bill 924 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Bethel, the 54th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Regulated Industries and Utilities Committee has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 520 do pass. House Bill 374 do pass by substitute. House Bill 332 do pass by substitute. House Bill 1065 do pass by substitute. House Bill 1066 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Schaefer, the 48th District Chairman. Mr. President, the State Institutions and Property Committee has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Resolution 1376 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Jeffries of the 17th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate State and Local Governmental Operations Committee has had under consideration the following legislation, has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 480 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 481 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 531 do pass. Senate Bill 534 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 537 do pass by substitute. House Bill 481 do pass. House Bill 956 do pass as amended. House Bill 1023 do pass. House Bill 1025 do pass. House Bill 1041 do pass. House Bill 1087 do pass. House Bill 1131 do pass. House Bill 1177 do pass. House Bill 1218 do pass. House Bill 1219 do pass. House Bill 1227 do pass. House Bill 1230 do pass. House Bill 1255 do pass. House Bill 1257 do pass. House Bill 1259 do pass. House Bill 1261 do pass. House Bill 1262 do pass. House Bill 1263 do pass. House Bill 1264 do pass. House Bill 1265 do pass. House Bill 1266 do pass. House Bill 1267 do pass. House Bill 1268 do pass. House Bill 1269 do pass. House Bill 1270 do pass. House Bill 1271 do pass. House Bill 1273 do pass. House Bill 1277 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Miller, the 49th District Chairman. Through the order, Mr. President.
Secretary reads Second readers.
Senate Resolution 828 by Senator McCoon of the 29th and others, Affordable Care Act, recognizing and condemning the effect of the American Catholic Church. House Resolution 834 by Senator James of the 35th and others, Health and Wellness Initiatives, urged to raise public awareness on constituency health and wellness issues. Senate Resolution 979 by Senator Underman of the 45th, Senate Aging Study Committee, create. Senate Resolution 1217 by Senator Hamrick of the 30th, Senate Garnishment Proceedings Study Committee, create. House Bill 318 by Representative Stevens of the 164th, Sales and Use Tax Exemptions, Donated Food for Hunger Relief, extend. House Bill 332 by Representative Parsons of the 42nd, Universal Access Fund, eliminate unnecessary regulation, revise provisions. House Bill 334 by Representative Stevens of the 164th, Sales and Use Tax Exemptions, Food and Beverages to Food Bank, extend. House Bill 450 by Representative Sims of the 169th and others, set off debt collection, debts owed to public housing authorities, authorize. House Bill 520 by Representative Parsons of the 42nd, energy purchase, amount of energy provider is required to purchase from generator, change. House Bill 534 by Representative Fullerton of the 151st and others, eligibility requirements, probate court clerks, modify provisions. House Bill 640 by Representative Rogers of the 26th, insolvent insurers, claimants' rights, correct certain language. House Bill 743 by Representative Rice of the 51st, motor fuel tax, expiration date for exemption for certain public transit and public campus transportation systems, extend. House Bill 808 by Representative Yates of the 73rd and others, taxation, exclusion to certain income of certain disabled veterans, provide. House Bill 818 by Representative Parsons of the 42nd and others, income tax credit, certain commercial geothermal heat pumps include. House Bill 846 by Representative Knight of the 126th and others, revenue, Department of, various administrative and procedural requirements, change. House Bill 851 by Representative Rice of the 51st and others, taxation of intangibles, rates charged by collecting officers, change certain requirements. House Bill 896 by Representative Coleman of the 97th and others, sales tax, distribution for educational purposes, change certain provisions. House Bill 923 by Representative Howard of the 121st and others, Richmond County, City of Augusta, change description of commissioner districts. House Bill 924 by Representative Howard of the 121st and others, Richmond County School Board, change description of districts. House Bill 934 by Representative Parsons of the 42nd and others, state agencies, guaranteed energy savings performance contracts, change certain provisions. House Bill 940 by Representative Packer of the 102nd and others, Georgia Public Defender Standards Council, pay attorney in event of conflict of interest in capital cases, change certain provisions. House Bill 965 by Representative Knight of the 126th and others, income tax allows certain fiduciaries an exemption to the requirement of paying estimated taxes. House Bill 1027 by Representative Stevens of the 164th and others, revenue and taxation, tax credit for film or video production in Georgia, change certain provisions. House Bill 1056 by Representative Battles of the 115th and others, ad valorem taxation, motor vehicles, clarify application to be consistent with federal provisions. House Bill 1065 by Representative Williams of the 4th, alcoholic beverages, tax payment and reporting by licensees, change certain provisions. House Bill 1066 by Representative Williams of the 4th, alcoholic beverages, licenses, change certain provisions. House Bill 1067 by Representative Rogers of the 26th and others, portable electronics insurance, issuance and regulation of limited licenses to sell, provide for comprehensive revision of provisions. House Bill 1176 by Representative Gollick of the 34th and others, 2011 Special Counsel on Criminal Justice Reform for Georgians, enact recommended provisions. House Resolution 1150 by Representative Coleman of the 97th and others, sales and use tax, education purposes, only distributed on basis of full-time equivalent student counts, CA. House Resolution 1376 by Representative Green of the 149th and others, conveyance of certain property, Baldwin, Carroll, Clinch, Coffee, and other counties, authorized through the order of Mr. President.
like to have the Senate's attention for just a moment. We are honored to have a Doctor of the Day, and to present the Doctor of the Day, I call upon the distinguished senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, it's my honor to present to you Dr. Charles Wilmer, who's Doctor of the Day, who does not reside in my district, but he's a very important man in my life. I will tell you that he is now the cardiology section chief at Piedmont here in Atlanta, graduate of the University of Virginia School of Medicine, and with his medical degree, and has been a pioneer in the spreading the use of defibrillators. In 1998, he was here testifying before a Senate committee, and I was carrying the bill adding those who utilize the defibrillators to the Good Samaritan law. I told him that day, I said, I just hadn't been feeling right. I really think that I probably need to get something checked. So he had me admitted that day into Piedmont Hospital, and the next day he put a stent in, and in 1998, and that stent still resides here, and some 14 years later. So to say that Dr. Wilmer is not as a special person is really an understatement in my life. But I just want you to know what a great pioneer Dr. Wilmer has been in the use of defibrillators. I'm sure he has helped to save countless lives throughout this whole state, and we're very honored to have him as Doctor of the Day, Dr. Charles Wilmer. Dr. Wilmer.
Thank you. As I've gotten older and matured a little bit, I realize the great job you guys are doing and watching out for our state, and we really appreciate that. Second of all, I can't say enough about Jack. People told me when I came down here for this Good Samaritan legislation that we'd never get it done. And Jack not only turned it around, and Speaker Murphy, they turned it around in 1 week. And one of the American Heart compatriots told me God has truly landed in this place. That is the fastest we've ever seen something like that happen. And I can tell you that I have seen children and adults saved because of the passage of that bill. Putting these defibrillators in high schools and other public venues has been very successful. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for watching out for the doctors, but also thank you for being sure that our high school students exercise and stay in shape and eat right foods. That's going to be very important for this future coming. And I hope also as you look at other bills in the next couple of years, research is very important to us. So thank you again for taking care of us.
Great. Well done. Let's take a picture. It is now time for the morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Senator from the 30th is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to excuse the senator from the 13th for business elsewhere in the Capitol. Unanimous consent to excuse.
Without objection, Senator from the 13th will be excused. Senator from the 54th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 9th and the 32nd for business outside the chamber.
9th and 32nd, without objection, the two will be excused. Chair recognizes Senator from the 41st.
Excuse senator from 42nd District.
42nd, without objection, Senator from the 42nd will be excused. Are there any other motions? Dean of the Senate, Senator from the 14th, be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse Senator 15th.
15th, without objection, and Senator will have announcement on funeral arrangements a little bit later. Any other motions to excuse? Senators, please signify your presence by voting the A switch. Secretary will unlock the machine. Chair recognizes Senator from the 50th. Nope. You got to. Okay. All right. It is now time for our Pastor of the Day. We're very honored to have him. It's now time for our Pastor of the Day. Would ask senators to please take your seats and cease conversation as we prepare the chamber for our morning devotion. Doorkeepers, secure the chambers at this time. It is now my honor to recognize the senator from the 3rd to lead us in our pledge and introduce our chaplain of the day. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now to the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag, to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. It gives me great pleasure today to introduce to you a very dear friend and community leader, the Reverend Peter Vivenzio. He is the senior pastor of the Calvary Baptist Church in Brunswick. He also serves as chaplain for the Southeast Georgia Regional Medical Center. He's been married to his wife, Diane, for 46 years, and she deserves a medal for that. He has 2 children, 6 grandchildren. He has a degree in marketing and management from Georgia Southern University. He has 2 masters and a doctorate degree from the in biblical theology from Beacon University. He's also a board member of the Southern Baptist Historical Commission. Reverend Vivenzio.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, honorable ladies and gentlemen of the Georgia Senate, and my good and dear friend, the Honorable William Ligon. I am grateful for the honor to be here with you today. As I look out over this room, I'm reminded of the call to leadership and how important leadership is to our families, to our communities, to our state, and indeed to America itself. Before me today is the epitome of leadership in the state of Georgia, the state Senate leaders. It is you who guide us through the trials and the uncertainties of today and give us renewed hope for our future. It has been said of late that we lack leadership in America, but I will say to you today That is not the problem that we have. We do not lack leadership. You see, the problem we have is not in quantity. The problem we have is in quality. That is what plagues us today. That is what challenges us today. We are very protective of something we call our reputation, but our reputation merely is that which we think of ourselves and that which we want other people to think we are. In fact, what we really need is to be people of character. Character is what counts. Character is what God really knows we really are. Winston Churchill said this: all the great things that a leader poses are simple and can be expressed in a single word. That is freedom, justice, honor, courage, character, duty, and hope. About courage, Winston Churchill said this: it is rightly esteemed the first of all human qualities because it is the quality which guarantees all the others. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, verse 48 says this: for everyone to whom much is given, for him much will be required, and to whom much has been committed, of him they will ask the more. The success or failure of our state and our nation is dependent not on having leaders, but having godly leaders. Leaders who seek God and entreat Him to guide, to revelate, inspire them, not to the will of he who prays, but to the will of he who hears and he who can answer. A godly leader bears the mark of who he follows. Use these words, I and you together. Let's use these words as a yardstick, if you will, to judge ourselves. A godly leader is marked by focus and perseverance, generosity, a fear of God, humility, hospitality, personal sacrifice, compassion, prayer, and dependency. Can we say that is who we are? Is this what makes up our character? Every great godly leader is limited by only three things. Number one, knowledge of his mind, worth of his character, and the principles upon which he builds his life. In 1752, George Washington created a personal prayer book consisting of 24 pages that he took with him onto the battlefield. One of those prayers was this: O gracious God, in Jesus Christ, my merciful and loving Father, I acknowledge and confess my guilt in the weak and imperfect performance of the duties of the day. I have called on Thee for pardon and forgiveness of sins. Please let me implore You to help me live according to those holy rules which Thou hast this day prescribed in Thy word. How less could we do than George Washington in our prayers and in our supplication to Him, in our quest to lead? May we seek God with the right motives, unselfish, in humility, with a character born out of righteous living before God, realizing that we cannot truly lead if we can't truly serve. And may God inspire us with our enthusiasm and have that enthusiasm to be contagious. Now I'm going to ask you, in awe of the great God we serve, would you close your eyes? Would you bow your head? Would you go to prayer with me? O most gracious and heavenly Father, today I pray for the leaders of our nation and especially of those of the state of Georgia. I ask that You would give our leaders wisdom beyond their understanding and the courage to choose the right path no matter the cost. I pray for all in authority over us that You would give them the grace and strength to stand against the temptation to use power as personal gain, power as a weapon, but rather to use that to carry it reverently and cherish it as a mother would her child. I pray that our leaders would lead from their knees, and that by this simple grace bring each of us to our knees before your throne. Have mercy on our great state of Georgia and our nation, and we pray it in the precious and holy name, the only name by which salvation comes upon us, and that is the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And we pray it and all say amen and amen.
Are there any unanimous consents? We have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions. Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? Chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw or commit? Mr. Secretary, are there any filed objections on any of the bills on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed in the Secretary's office.
Is there objection to agree in the Port Committee on the state and local governmental operations, which is favorable passage of the local consent calendar? Chair hears none, and the Port Committee has agreed to. Question now is on the passage of the local consent calendar. All of those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. And the Secretary will unlock the machine. On the local consent calendar, the yeas are 45 and the nays are 3, and all the bills on the local consent calendar are therefore adopted. Moving on now to the general calendar. Secretary will read House Bill 250.
Is this all one fiscal? House Bill 250 by Representative Weldon III and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 23, Title 47 of the OCGA relating to the Georgia Judicial Retirement System and for other purposes. The Committee in the Senate on Retirement recommends that this bill do pass. There's a fiscal note attached to the bill.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 54th to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members of the Senate, for the opportunity to present House Bill 250. House Bill 250 is an adjustment to the judicial retirement system of Georgia. It does essentially 3 things. The first is that it allows for a member who, if they were to pass or their survivor to pass, before all of the members' contributions had been paid out, or cumulative contributions, that the balance would be paid out in that situation. In other words, all that you've put in, you do get out if someone were to pass in that situation. I'll actually skip to the third thing first, which is that it allows for the choice at the time of retirement for designation of spousal benefits. That is standard. That is the direction all of our retirement systems are moving, is to make an election at the time of retirement as opposed to the time of hiring. And then the second thing it does in the bill is actually, for those that are in the system now, corrects that and allows them to shift to a time of retirement election, again, as we are providing for on a going forward basis. Mr. President, I will yield for questions. If there are none, I would ask for favorable consideration and yield the well.
There are no questions.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection agreed? The report of committee which favor pass the bill? Chair hears none. Report of committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are the objections? Chair hears none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 44 and the nays are 1. This bill having received the Constitution majority is therefore passed. Secretary will read House Bill 548.
House Bill 548 by Representative Martin of the 47th and others. Bill to be entitled an Act to amend Code Section 3491 of the OCGA related to definitions relative to workers' compensation and for other purposes. The Committee of the Senate on Insurance and Labor recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes distinguished senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill simply comes from the franchisors and franchisees who both support this bill, changing the definition on employees. Both groups in favor. Nobody voted against it in the House or committee, and I ask for your favorable vote. Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection agreed? The report of committee which favor pass the bill. Chair is none. The report of committee is agreed to. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. Resolution for you. Ready? On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 44 and the nays are 0. This bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 1219 by Senator Orrick of the 36 and others. Resolution recognizing independent bookstores and commending independent booksellers and for other purposes. Whereas independent bookstores support state and local governments by collecting sales taxes which pay for local schools, public safety, roads, sidewalks, and other infrastructures that contribute to a better quality of life in the community. Whereas studies have shown that local businesses donate to community causes at more than twice the rate of chains and 100% more than online retailers. Whereas Georgia authors often depend on independent bookstores to promote and introduce their works to an audience of readers that the author may not otherwise reach. And many famous Georgia authors owe their success to independent booksellers who believed in their work and helped make them known to wider audiences, as well as regional and national publishers and editors. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend Georgia's independent bookstores, their owners, and their staff for their invaluable contributions to this state, their creativity and resourcefulness, and to the spirit of entrepreneurship they exhibit, which is the foundation of American enterprise.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The resolution is adopted. Chair recognizes Senator from 36 to recognize special guests in the gallery.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm so appreciative of those of you who were able to sign with me this resolution. History shows us that bookselling was a much more profitable venture in 1892 than it is today, but these folks have persisted, usually more out of a love for the written word than for profit. There are independent bookstores all over our great state. They employ hundreds of our constituents, and they pay taxes, they promote literacy, they support our schools, libraries, and charities, and return a larger proportion of their revenues to the local economy than those big chain stores and online retailers. Atlanta was recently named 4th most literate city in America. How about that? And that ranking is partly based on the number of bookstores in a community. Independent bookstores here in Atlanta and across our great state enrich our communities and make us better. So if you're fortunate enough to have an independent bookstore in your district, and most, if not all of you do, I hope you'll seek them out. I hope you'll support independent booksellers and thank them for what they do to make our state a stronger, more interesting, and better educated place to live. And if you will join with me, we have with us today from Carrollton, Georgia, in the balcony, the representative of Horton's Books and Gifts, Margaret Adams. She is representing the oldest bookstore in Georgia, one of the oldest bookstores in the nation, in operation since 1892, celebrating 120 years anniversary. That's Margaret Adams. With Margaret, will you stand? Thank you. And remain standing. From Swanee, Read It Again Books is represented by Kim McNamara, who's with us today. From Decatur, Eagle Eye Books is represented by Doug Robinson. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Eagle Eye Books. From the East Atlanta Village, Bound to Be Read Books is represented by Erica Hensley. Thank you, Erica. And the youngest and newest independent bookstore in Athens is also represented in spirit. They could not be here, but they opened just a few months ago, Avid Books in Athens, Georgia. So join me in recognizing the booksellers and independent bookstores of our great state of Georgia. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th to recognize some folks in the gallery.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have Mr. Elijah Attar, that is from Nigeria, that is visiting us and planning an international women's conference in June. So I'd like to recognize him in the gallery at this time. So welcome. And also, thank you. And also, you will see on your desk a calendar from LifeLink. And I'd like to just encourage everyone in the sound of my voice to please understand that when you get your driver's license, you can check that you want to be a donor. And it came to me, I didn't know what LifeLink was a few years ago. And my teenage son was driving me to the airport and showed me his new driver's license and showed me that he was going to be a donor. And we talked for a few minutes and said, "Mom, do you see the picture? You see my new license?" And when I said yes, he said, "But look at it closely, I'm going to be a donor." And I said, he said, "Are you going to be one?" And I said, "I'm not sure, I'd have to think about that." He said, "Why, Mom? You'll help someone. You're always trying to help people." And unfortunately, 2 weeks later, he was in a crash. And when I got to the hospital, I found out about LifeLink. And I knew that he wanted to be a donor. So my son was able to help many people through LifeLink, donating his heart, lungs, kidneys, pancreas. 7 people are living today, and someone has his beautiful eyes. So he and everybody survived and doing well. And little did I know that I'd have to hear more about LifeLink a few years later. My husband's been on the list to receive a kidney for the past 7 years. So we're waiting. He's at the top of the list now. So I want to encourage all of you to please check on your driver's license, LifeLink, because you could save someone's life and you could continue to live on through that person. So thank you very much for listening to me, and don't forget to take your calendar home and see some faces of those who have been the recipient of transplants. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Secretary will read House Bill. Hold on. I don't know if he's ready or not. Secretary will read House Bill 635.
House Bill 635, Representative Lucas of the 139th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend an act entitled Macon Water Commissioners Pension Plan, approved December 30th, 1953, and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Retirement recommends that this bill do pass. There is a fiscal note attached to the bill.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 18th. Present the bill. Please give Senator your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. I bring you House Bill 635 on behalf of the Macon Water Authority. This bill, which has to do with their retirement plan, will allow them to add a new defined contribution component for new hires beginning July 1st of this year, and it also brings the plan into compliance with current federal law. I ask your favorable consideration for House Bill 635.
No questions. Senator from the 19th, your light's on. You wish to, by accident. All right. Sure. Thank you. Senator from the 26th, what purpose you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. In an abundance of caution, I ask unanimous consent to be excused under Rule 5.1.8D.
Without objection, the senator will be excused on this vote. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection agreeing to report of committee which fail will pass the bill? Chair is none. Report of committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair is none and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlike the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 48 and the nays are 0, and this bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary will read House Bill 636.
House Bill 636 by Representative Jacobs of the 80th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to incorporate the city of Brookhaven into DeKalb County to provide for a charter for the city of Brookhaven and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations.
Suspend. Senator from 53rd. Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 1264 by Senator Mills of the 53rd. A resolution recognizing and commending the Gordon Lee High School wrestling team on winning the 2011-2012 state championships and for other purposes. Whereas the Gordon High School wrestling team were Class A area dual runner-ups and Class A state dual champions in January of 2012 and straight traditional runner-ups in February of 2012. Whereas the state champion team included Jonathan Ragsdale, Steele Lance, Chase Wood, Mika Clark, Alex Spires, Will Jacks, Corey Ullman, Sidney Reinhart, Dylan Skipper, Grayson Dunn, Ethan West, Shane Farmer, Clayton Reeves, Corey Jewell, Dallas Alder, Jake Hovey, Dallas Goodlett, Ty Moses, Clay Whitley, Brandon Murphy, co-captain Blake Clayton, co-captain Jonathan Bettis, and captain Jordan Douglas Queen. Whereas this magnificent team performed with precision throughout the season, and these wrestlers have come to earn their well-deserved reputation for high standards of athletic achievement, quality of play, and superior sportsmanship. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the Gordon Lee High School wrestling team for its unparalleled achievements and congratulate the wrestlers, coaches, assistant coaches, and managers on their state title. Senate Resolution 1265 by Senator Mills of the 53rd, a resolution honoring the life and memory of Jordan Douglas Queen and for other purposes. Whereas the state of Georgia mourns the loss of one of its most distinguished citizens with the passing of Jordan Douglas Queen on November 9th, 2011. Whereas Jordan was born on November 5th, 1994 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, a beloved son of Jared and Suzanne Queen and a wonderful brother of Braden Queen. Whereas in active youth, Jordan worked with the Awanas program, worked in an optometrist's office, and planned to attend college to seek a degree as an optometrist. Whereas a young man of deep and abiding faith, Jordan was an active member of Peavine Baptist Church. Whereas he was captain of the Gordon Lee High School wrestling team, where he wrestled in the 220-pound weight class, and was a preseason 4th-ranked 220-pound wrestler in Class Single A. Whereas Jordan was 43rd in his class and maintained a 3.656 GPA and a 92.25 grade point average. Whereas a compassionate and generous young man with a huge heart and smile, Jordan will long be remembered for his love of family and friendship, and his loyal son, brother, and friend will be missed by all who had the great fortune of knowing him. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body join in honoring the life and memory of Jordan Douglas Queen and express their deepest and most sincere regret in his passing.
Is there objection to adoption of the two resolutions? Chairs none. Two resolutions are adopted. Recognize Senator from the 53rd to speak to the resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. I am honored today to give tribute to these two resolutions. First off, there's great things that come from Northwest Georgia, and you have seen me here already recognizing the Gordon Lee High School girls softball as being state champs, but today we get to recognize the Gordon Lee wrestling team being single A state champs. Would you give them a hand there in the balcony? We have several people to recognize. Brent Raby, the head coach, assistant coaches Bert Bradford, Ricky Murdoch, Bob Wilson, and co-captains Jonathan Bettis, Blake Clayton, Principal Clay Crowder, Chickamauga City School Superintendent Melody Day. And as you saw, we had a second resolution for Jordan Queen, who was captain. He was tragically killed and taken from us back in the fall this year. And this team decided not to replace the captain, but to honor him in becoming state champs. So please help me again recognize Gordon Lee state champs, the Gordon Lee Trojans wrestling team.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you, Senator. Secretary will read House Bill 636.
House Bill 636 by Representative Jacobs of the 80th and others. The bill to be entitled an act to incorporate the city of Brookhaven into DeKalb County to provide for a charter for the city of Brookhaven and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. The Senate State and Local Governmental Operations Committee offers the following substitute to House Bill 636. Bill to be entitled an act to incorporate the city of Brookhaven into DeKalb County to provide for a charter for the city of Brookhaven and for other purposes. Senator Stoner from the 6th offers the following amendment. Amend the Senate State and Local Governmental Operations Committee substitute to House Bill 636 by replacing Brookhaven with Ashford everywhere it appears.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 40th present the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, House Bill 636 continues the trend in North DeKalb and North Fulton by basically giving people the right to vote on how they choose to be governed. We've done this in Sandy Springs, we've done this in Johns Creek, we've done this in Milton, we've done this in Dunwoody, we've done it in Peachtree Corners, and now we're talking about doing it in Brookhaven. Brookhaven is located in North DeKalb. It would be the largest city in DeKalb County, the 16th largest city in Georgia. Population's about 49,000 people. I've got a map and basically the boundaries of the city of Dunwoody and I-285 to the north, the city of Sandy Springs and the city of Atlanta to the west, I-85 to the south, and the city of Chamblee to the east. There was a Carl Vinson Institute study done. This has been a 2-year process with estimated revenues and expenditures. Let's see, expenditures about $25 million and the revenues exceeded that. For point of reference, Dunwoody spent about $20 million in 2012, their comparable size. Dunwoody had a $3 million surplus. The form of government, there'll be 4 city council members, 1 mayor at large. Each council member will represent approximately 12,000 residents, and versus a county commissioner, which represents 138,000. Ladies and gentlemen, the bottom line here is this gives people the opportunity to vote on their form of government We've done it before. Imagine we'll continue this trend. Government is best when it's local. I ask for your favorable consideration of the substitute to HB 636. With that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
You want to take questions, Senator? Nope, not going to take questions. Chair recognizes Senator on the 10th. Speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of this body. It's beginning to be a familiar refrain, but I have to say, here we go again. But in this particular case, this particular refrain strikes a very, very sour note. The senator from the 40th came up here, spoke 5 minutes about this bill. 5 minutes about the time that it takes for us to incorporate a new city. I would certainly hope that the senator gives the residents of that new city a lot more respect than he's given those of us in this General Assembly. He refused to take questions, refused to even take a moment to answer the very basic questions about what he's proposing in House Bill 636. So here we go again. I'm left up here to only come to certain conclusions because I don't have any other information, data. I didn't have the opportunity to ask the senator any questions about his proposed legislation, so I have to come to my own conclusions. And I've come to a few of those I'd just like to take a moment and share with you. First of all, as chair of the Senate delegation for DeKalb County, one of the conclusions I come to is the senator from the 40th failed to present this bill to the Senate delegation that represents DeKalb County because he must be afraid of how we would vote. Now, I would never ever speak badly of a senator, but when it comes to issues like this, if a person is afraid to have an open and frank dialogue, quite frankly, that person to me must be a coward. The second conclusion I can come to is that this bill circumvents the local delegation, and it really disenfranchises the voters. Not just in this proposed city, but it also disenfranchised those 700,000 voters in all of DeKalb County. Well, I don't have much data, nor was I given any information from the senator from the 40th as to why this action was taken. So here I am again, left to draw my own conclusion as to why this bill seeks to disenfranchise voters of South DeKalb. Well, the only conclusion I can come to is perhaps those in this area want to separate themselves from a majority black county that's governed to their own white city. Not much unlike what's happened in some of the other cities that we've incorporated in this General Assembly. If that's the case, then I certainly wish the senator from the 40th had taken the time to tell us. Because I really don't like being up here coming to my own conclusions when I simply could have asked the senator from the 40th that question. Will this particular city, how will this particular city impact the voters, all of the voters of DeKalb County? What is the racial makeup of this particular city? I wish I had some answers to some of those very basic questions, but the only thing I'm left to conclude is, here we go again. Now, I know certain of us have certain expertise in this chamber, but when you have a delegation comprised of 7 senators, I think it's better to draw on the collective wisdom, intelligence of those 7 senators than it is to draw on one. We would have liked, and I state emphatically for the record, as chair of this delegation, we would have liked to have had an opportunity to consider this bill locally. here we go again. As this bill has meandered its way through the General Assembly, starting over there in the House, I believe, and finally making its way over here, the only thing that I can conclude, looking at the history of this bill, is those who put this bill together really didn't have any kind of idea what the heck they're doing. And that's a conclusion I've come to. And let me tell you why I've come to that conclusion. This bill has been amended, and it's been amended again. I'm looking at a slew of emails. There's a whole bunch of them that document the history of this bill, and I certainly want to make these emails available to the Justice Department as well as to the press. One email I have to read. I believe this email is from the representative in the House who sponsored this legislation, but it says, can you calculate for me the property value that would generate a break-even scenario, meaning all higher property values will see a tax cut, whereas all lower property values will see a tax increase. And then it has, however modest. I hate to stand here in this well and draw my own conclusions because I really had a good question prepared to ask the senator from the 40th. Because I would like to know, how is it that the author of this legislation can have discussions with the Carl Vinson Institute, and let me add, this email was sent to Ted over in Carl Vinson Institute, by the way. How is it the author of this legislation can talk about generating a break-even scenario where all higher value properties will see a tax cut and all lower value properties will see a tax increase? Sounds to me like the author of this legislation has put together a perfect little city where the rich will get tax cuts and those below will certainly see a tax increase. But yet, I know it takes their vote to pass this measure. Maybe not in this General Assembly today, but certainly when this initiative goes to the ballot box on July 31st. I want to know from the senator from the 40th, what impact will this city have on those that's making at the poverty level or below? What about those middle income voters? Let me just read for you another email that we received, that I'm really, really fond of this one, because this email talks to what strip clubs are located within this new city boundaries. And yeah, I have to pause for a moment because I really want to be emphatic about this particular issue. This email that I have here from the author of this legislation talks what other strip clubs are located within the city boundaries. And I hate to say, here we go again, and I hate to stand up here today and draw my own conclusions. But one conclusion that I can only come to is somebody must be thinking about what revenue is generated from the strip club. And oh, by the way, the response was there's only one, and that's Pink Pony, somewhere there on Buford Highway. Some of you in here may know what I'm talking about. The response was there's only one. Now, why is that important? Why is that important? I'm glad you asked me that question because I couldn't ask the senator from the 40th. So let me just surmise as to why I think that's important. When you look at the fiscal note, and this is an evolving fiscal note, by the way, because from what I understand, it changes almost daily. But this city shows a fiscal impact, shows a surplus of $136,000. Surplus. Surpluses are good. Let me remind you that because of that one business, the strip club, the Pink Pony, they pay over $250,000 a year in taxes. I can only wonder what would happen if all of the residents who's voted on this new city knows that their new city is being propped up by a strip club. But I guess those in those high income brackets really don't care where their tax breaks come from. Maybe all of us should go and get a few more lap dances. $250,000. But see, I couldn't ask the senator from the 40th that question about the revenue for this new city, this new made-up city, this new unnecessary city, this new city that no one in DeKalb County has asked me for. One that the commissioners have opposed. The senator from the 40th was gracious enough to pass around a column that was written in Crossroads magazine. And it talks about these new cities springing up and how we have been, and it mentions some people in here. It even mentioned my name in this particular article. Glad he gave me a copy of it. How we have been helpless in the forming of these new cities. But let me just say to the senator from the 40th, as well as the senator, the House member who sponsored this bill, as well as the editors of Crossroads magazine, that if you want to stop this city, you have an opportunity on July 31st. Somebody should generate some articles in this magazine and tell them to go tell the people that's in this new area. Because you see, what they've crafted in this unnecessary city is certain artificial boundaries. That includes the pink pony, by the way. That those within those artificial boundaries have an opportunity to go to the polls and vote. Somebody from Crossroads magazine should write an article telling those that live within the artificial boundaries of this new city that if you don't want this new city, exercise your right on July 31st to go and vote. I've seen a lot of things in this General Assembly. And I'm here to stand in opposition to the forming of this artificially created, this racially gerrymandered city called Ashford. I'm not really sure what the name is. Maybe it's Brookhaven again. But I'm here to tell you, before you cast your vote, think about your city, because think about your county, think about those areas that you represent, because the one thing that I heard the senator from the 40th say in the 5 minutes that he stood here is that this trend toward these new designer cities will continue. He said that a few minutes ago. And I wish I had an opportunity to dialogue the senator from the 40th, because I'm sure the press, I'm sure DeKalb, Fulton, Henry even would like to know, what exactly did he mean by that comment? Where exactly is this state headed with these new designer cities? Is it the intent to segregate all whites in private cities in Georgia? Is that the intent? If it is, I wish somebody would have the courage to stand up here and say so. I yield the well, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 41st speak to the bill. There were no questions. Chair recognizes 41st.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, the senator from the 10th brought out key elements, problems with this incorporation. Certainly a city can be a viable tool for a community, and it can help build and improve a community. But today, we have seen an example of what this is like. First of all, we have local delegations. The local DeKalb County delegation on this was skirted. A bill that should have been a local bill was taken outside that process and made a statewide bill. In the committee process, the author of the bill failed to disclose much information. In fact, they had received an updated physical impact study, which he did not disclose until after the bill was presented to the committee. Now, this is wrong. We often vote for partisan reasons. But I hope all the Republican members of this body will realize today that you should not vote just because it's one of your party colleagues bringing this bill. When you see a senator come to the well and refuse to take questions on an important issue, that should make you angry. And that makes people out there watching Lawmakers tonight angry. It makes people in the back row angry. And it makes the public angry when you're afraid to discuss the important issues dealing with the corporation. And doing so at a later date in a summary or something will fail to correct the fault and the insult that he has done to this body. When you do not allow us to be able to respond to questions our constituents pose to us, you are doing something wrong. This measure has only been in the legislature 1 year, done what he took several years. This is not a rush, and if it is a rush, it's a rush to pass a bad piece of legislation. In fairness, I ask you today to vote no. Vote no because it violated local delegation rules, the way it was passed. But more importantly, when you have an author of a bill fail to disclose true and factual information at committee meetings, and when you have an author on the floor fail to answer important questions to allow us to inform our constituents and inform the members of this body, it is a process that should stop today and that you would not accept if you were in the minority party. So I urge you to vote against this bill at this time. And I do yield for questions if there are any.
Chair recognizes Senator Sagan for a question.
Senator, do you yield, sir?
I yield.
Is this city of Brookhaven, is it necessary?
Each and every citizen can decide that, but they need to be given the true facts. They need to see the type of physical uncertainty that's been created by this. And unfortunately, when it goes on the ballot in November, you have special interest groups. People out there are saying, well, it'll be voted on. But you have people who want to build a city hall putting money into a campaign. You have people who want to get trash collection putting money into a campaign. You have forces and financial pressures trying to pass a city referendum without full information going to the public. One of our duties here is to get that information out. And when the author of the bill and the person delivering the message on the floor refuses to give us information, refuses to answer questions, and refuses to be open and fair, then this process is violated and the public is insulted. Thank you.
Does the Senator further yield?
I do.
Senator, what will happen if we vote no and address this bill next session?
I think what you'll be doing is creating a more fair atmosphere in this body if you vote no today. You won't be stopping a process. But make sure this process is done fair. As they stated, as Senator from the 10th stated, this bill was amended many times, and there is more work to be done. It has been rushed through here, and the reasons maybe people aren't being fair and open and giving all the information to committee members or answering questions is because it needs more work, and we can work on this issue and bring it back next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 10th for a question. Yield. It passes. He passes.
I yield well.
No, Senator from 35th has a question.
I yield.
Senator, isn't it true that this bill went through the SLOGO committee and both times at the hearing as well as at the meeting where the full body had to vote, there was opposition from people all over that area?
Thank you. I appreciate that. There were many citizens there that were coming from the community to oppose this bill, and others from the county that had concerns. And those concerns were probably not fully heard because the author of the bill failed to present all the information he could have presented at the time of the hearing on this bill. And I appreciate that very much.
And will the senator further yield?
I yield.
And isn't it true that I received petitions, 500 from one group and 3,000 from another, both saying they do not want Brookhaven to become a city.
Thank you. I'm sure the senator from the 35th knows of what she speaks.
Okay, and one last question, if the gentleman will yield.
I yield.
Isn't it true that we have all received numerous emails from not only people in the affected area, but throughout DeKalb County saying, please say no to Brookhaven becoming a city?
I certainly have, and I know others have. And the important thing that I've heard is that they weren't being given all the facts and information that they would like to have before they make a decision, and rushing to a decision at this time would not be fair. Plus, they were very concerned with the physical statements Senator 10th referred to, that really the financial security of this city relies on revenue equal or less to the amount of one business. And of any city that fragile is not on a safe fiscal grounds when it starts out. And I think that can be addressed, as the senator from the 2nd stated, and if we work on this a little more.
As well as the date, right? You heard
Correct.
about they want to rush it through. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 55th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I yield.
Is it not true that this will be on the ballot in July rather than November?
Yes,
Is that true, Senator?
that is correct.
And isn't it also true that it was only 30.8% after a poll was taken that did not want Brookhaven?
That is correct.
Thank you, Senator.
No further questions.
I yield the will and urge you to defeat this measure.
The question is on the adoption of the floor amendment. Is there objection? There is objection. I'm sorry. My apologies. I thought we'd spoke to amendment number 1. Chair recognizes Senator from the 6th to speak to amendment number 1. Floor amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, you may ask, why is the senator from the 6th here in the well? Well, now to my new district that I have, I go all the way to the Fulton-DeKalb County line. And due to that fact, I now have historic Brookhaven. And those who know me, who have served with me, both chambers, know that I'm definitely someone who listens to my constituents and tries to service them to the best of my ability. So as this process has come to the Senate, I've heard a hue and cry from the members of historic Brookhaven there on the Fulton County side about the name of this new city. Now, when this bill came over from the House, it wasn't called Brookhaven, it was called Ashford. In fact, the majority whip in the House had that name inserted. And let me tell you why there's such a hue and cry about the name of the city from my constituents. I'll give you an example. I represent Smyrna, and Vinings also still. We have what we call historic Vinings. Now, if Smyrna decided one day to change its name to Vinings, I know the folks in historic Vinings would have a hue and cry about that name being used. And let's be honest, the reason this name is being used is not because there are areas of this new city that use this name Brookhaven in the sense of subdivisions. Well, guess what, folks? There's subdivisions in Smyrna that are named Vinings, that use the name Vinings. The point is, it's about raising property values. The reason we're using Brookhaven is to raise property values. It has nothing to do with any true historic reason. Historic Brookhaven, majority is on the Fulton side. There's a little sliver just barely across the line in DeKalb. And that's the reason why this is being done. Talk about creating confusion. We have enough problems as is with the name Peachtree Street. Well, let's have 2 areas named Brookhaven while we're at it. And so today I rise to ask for this amendment specifically to not have one group of folks hijack a name and use it specifically for basically raising their property values when in actual reality, historic Brookhaven is on the Fulton side of the line there. Therefore, I ask for your support in this amendment, and just so you know, as it stands, if obviously it's not adopted, I am voting against this bill. There is no reason to use this name. The amendment changes the name back to Ashford as the majority whip did in the House. We are in agreement on this, and there's no reason this shouldn't be named Ashford, not Brookhaven. If there's any questions, Mr. President, I'll yield the well.
No questions, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the 40th. What purpose you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that the committee rejected the term Ashford by vote?
I'm sure the senator knows from which he speaks.
Is it further not true? Further parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it further not true that the majority whip said that he will vote for this bill when it comes back, whether it be Brookhaven or Ashford?
Sure the senator knows from which he speaks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for people to reject the amendment.
The question now is on the floor amendment authored by the senator from the 6th. All of those in favor, rise, stand, and be counted. If you are in favor of Amendment 1. Reverse. On the amendment, the yeas are 11 and the nays are 28, and the amendment has failed. Now, the questions on the adoption of committee substitute. Is there objection? Without objection, the committee substitute is adopted. Now, does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection granted to report of committee which fail to pass the bill? Chair hears none. Report of committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question on the pass of the bill. All of those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. Senator. Just cancel the vote. Did you get it right? Let's re-vote that one if you don't mind. Secretary will unlock the machine. We are voting on SB 636. HB 636. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 36, the nays are 14, and this bill, having received Rex constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary will read House Bill 685.
House Bill 685, by Representative Maddox of the 172nd and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 4 of the OCGA relating to animals so as to extensively revise provisions relating to dogs and especially provisions relating to dangerous and vicious dogs and for other purposes. The Committee of the Senate on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Senate Judiciary Committee offers the following substitute to House Bill 685. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 4 of the OCGA relating to dogs so as to revise provisions relating to dogs and for other purposes. Senator Stone from the 23rd and others offers the following substitute to House Bill 685. Adding after line 212, the dog is working or training and as a hunting dog, herding dog, or predator control dog.
All right, Chair recognizes Senator from 30th. Present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 685 establishes minimum standards for control and regulation of dangerous and vicious dogs and provides for penalties for the violation. If there are no questions, I'll yield the well. The amendment is just to protect dogs working as hunting dogs and predator dogs, and it should be fine.
Chair recognizes Senator from 34th for a question.
Mr. President, will the senator yield?
I yield.
Senator, because I'm just not familiar with dogs and what you just said, can you define for me what's the difference between a hunting dog and what's the other one you just?
I'm going to defer to the senator from the 23rd. This is his amendment. And
okay.
I know what a hunting dog is. I'm not sure I know what a predator dog is.
Senator, would you further yield?
Yes.
That means you'll be learning with me?
That's absolutely correct.
Thank you, Senator. We'll wait on the author of the amendment.
No further questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from 23rd is recognized to speak to his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a simple amendment. As most of you know, I'm from a dog-friendly part of the state, Waynesboro, Georgia, where the Georgia field trials are held every year. This simply allows that a dangerous dog, not a vicious dog, be allowed off premises while it is working or training as a hunting dog, a breeding dog, or a predator-controlled dog. Now, this is always by definition while it's working or training. So that means there will be supervision, but it will allow the dog to be off premises under the supervision of its trainer or worker. And I would ask that you support both the amendment and the bill. Thank you.
You do have a question.
Sure.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 47th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, would you yield?
I certainly will.
Being that I'm from the home of the Bulldogs, said if Uga's out on the field and protected us from an Auburn defensive back, that'd be one of those things that your amendment would speak to?
Well, it could. It could. Possibly, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. No further questions.
That would fall under the herding dog approach, I suspect. That's all, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from 33rd speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this is a serious matter. I used to raise German Shepherds. Had 4 or 5 different litters and had probably a half a dozen dogs and females. I'll use that term. I also now have several American Bulldogs, which are bulldogs that weigh about 140 pounds. They look like Uga, but they're big. They bred them back up to the size they were when they worked on South Georgia farms and in England. It looks to me as if this bill is written well. You've got herding dogs and working dogs, and of course your toy and companion dogs. There's a big difference, and dogs can kill someone, and dogs that have never bitten anybody before can kill someone. As much as I love them, that's just the facts. It looks like to me the amendment's worded well so that working, and I've never seen too many hunting dogs that are that fierce. They're usually into what they're doing. Now the predator dogs, you need to have that definition, I guess, because we have coyote problem in the state, as you know, and it looks like it's well balanced in a well balanced approach. So I just wanted to say a word on behalf of my dogs and all the people that are supporting this bill. They're trying to make sense out of it because they're wonderful animals to have.
Thank you, Senator. Any other senator wish to speak on behalf of their dog? Questions on amendment number
Parliament.
Stage inquiry, Senator from 33rd.
Didn't have to do that to me.
No.
I was trying to help.
Is there objection to amendment number 1? Without objection, amendment number 1 is adopted. Question on the adoption of committee substitute is amended. Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute is amended. Is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection agreed to report of committee which favor pass the bill? Chair is none. Report of committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put, or the objections? Chair is none. All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary will light the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 1, and this bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary will read House Bill 692.
House Bill 692 by Representative Mitchell of the 88th. Bill to be entitled An Act to amend Chapter 2, Title 20 of the OCGA relating to elementary and secondary education and for other purposes. The Committee in the Senate Education and Youth recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Senator on the 56 present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. My fellow senators, today we've got a good bill to help assure that any teacher or education professional who has been engaging in cheating or other nefarious acts will have to pay back any bonuses or salary increase that were directly related to such cheating. I think we can all agree that most all of our teachers work hard. It's a true calling to be an educator, and we thank them for all their hard work. And those who have done wrong should not give a black eye to all those who are doing the right thing. This will say we're taking the proper steps as the state government, as Georgians, to make sure that nobody was rewarded unjustly. And if there are no questions, I'd ask your favorable passage of this bill.
You do have a couple of questions, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from 39th for a question.
Will Senator yield?
Yes, Senator.
Isn't it true that I agree with you that the numbers of teachers and administrators who cheat on test scores is very, very small?
Yes, sir.
Will Senator further yield?
Yes.
Isn't it true that while the intent of House Bill 692 is good, and I will probably ultimately vote for it, isn't it true that the bill does not allow for the administrative process that is conducted by the Professional Standards Commission and the criminal process that might be performed by the any district attorney or state's attorney for that matter? Isn't it true that those processes would not be finished? Those processes would not be brought to conclusion when this bill could be put in place, so a teacher could be punished before the fact, before the administrative or criminal processes are concluded, and therefore that this bill is a flawed bill. Isn't that true, Senator?
Thank you for your questions, Senator. I do believe that the bill is not necessarily flawed because they would actually have to be found to have committed those acts, which would be something that would have been determined by the administration or other areas.
Will the senator yield
Yes,
to
Senator.
field the question?
I will field and yield.
Isn't it true that a school system could find a teacher has violated their rules? Then it could go to the Professional Standards Commission for adjudication, so to speak, but that the process of appealing that decision, Superior Court otherwise, might not be finished at that point when they're penalized?
I am sure you know what you speak, Senator, but I believe that the process will work just fine, and we will duly reward or put the proper penalties in place for those who have erred in this process.
Chair recognizes. That's all the questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree on the report of committee which fail to pass the bill. Chair is none. Report of committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? Chair is none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52 and the nays are 0. This bill, having seen Rex constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary will read House Bill 728.
House Bill 728 by Representative Jaspers of the 12th. A bill to be entitled an act to provide for legislative findings to amend Code Section 44560 of the OCGA relating to covenants running with the land, the effective zoning laws, and for other purposes. The Committee on the Senate Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Senator in the 51st to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you 728 today. House bill seeks to clarify treatment of covenants running with the land created prior to an existence of a county or municipal zoning laws. If a zoning ordinance expressly acknowledges the continuing application of a restrictive covenant upon the ordinance's initial enactment, the covenant will be effective until it expires on its own terms. This applies to covenants created before the county or the municipality adopted the zoning laws. If there's no questions, I'll yield the floor, Mr. President.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree on the report of committee which failed to pass the bill. Chair has none. Report of committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair has none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 48 and the nays are 1, and this bill, AMC Rex Constitutional Majority, is therefore passed. Secretary will read House Bill 732.
House Bill 732 by Representative McBrayer, the 153rd, and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 4284 of the OCGA relating to the issuance of license plates to veterans awarded Purple Hearts and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Public Safety recommends that this bill do pass. Senator Loudermilk with the 52nd and others offers the following amendment. Amend the House Committee substitute to House Bill 732 by inserting after awareness on line 12 the following. To provide for a special license plate to promote lung cancer awareness, research, and treatment of lung cancer, to provide for a special license plate for supporting nurses in Georgia in the nursing profession, and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Senator with the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. What House Bill 732 does, it's actually got several different areas in it. Section 1 allows that manufacturers of trailers that they can obtain a transporter license in order to pull trailers to trade shows or exhibitions or parades instead of having to actually have a license plate for it. And currently under Georgia law it doesn't allow that. Then Section 2 is an area that allows for Georgia residents who are disabled to any degree and are serving in the military services, they can receive a free license plate and revalidation decals designated for disabled veterans. Currently, you can only get it if you're not still in the military, but we have people that have been declared disabled, but they're still serving, and this allows them to to be able to do that. Senator from the 15th had a bill that allowed that, which is passed on the House side, but it didn't go as far as this one because this one goes ahead and it adds the international symbol of disabled wheelchair access to a Georgia disabled veterans tag if they're disabled to the degree they need that. It also allows a member of the armed services or reserves who's still serving on active duty after being awarded the Purple Heart citation to be issued a Purple Heart license plate. It also creates a revenue sharing special license plate for prostate cancer awareness and research, and the money goes to prostate research. It also provides that certified firefighters shall be exempt from paying any annual special license plate renewal fee. And there's an amendment on your desk that I support, and by the senator from the 52nd, which creates 2 additional special purpose license plates, and they have done all the paperwork on both of these with the Department of Revenue, and they both have been approved by the Department of Revenue. Be glad, Mr. President, to try to answer any questions if anybody has one.
The chair recognizes Senator from the 34th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I do.
Senator, you mentioned the senator from the 15th, and I did recall starting to read this bill that I had heard some of this before, some of this language. Can you tell me again what's the difference or the likeness in the 2 bills?
Well,
I know
the senator from the 15th dealt with the veterans that are still serving to allow them to be able to get a veteran's tag, in which this one goes a lot further than that because it goes in and allows for a disabled symbol, the wheelchair, for those that are disabled. And he is, I think, also had that a Purple Heart recipient. He had those 2 areas, but this bill goes a lot further than that.
Thank you, sir.
And his bill has passed the House as he had it.
But if the senator will continue to yield, that what you just said in conclusion is that what we passed out of the Senate is in fact included in this bill from the House.
That's
because
correct.
it goes further.
That's correct.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, I ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Senator. Senator, you wish to speak to the bill? Chair recognizes Senator on the 52nd to speak to his floor amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very brief since the senator from the 11th, I think, adequately covered the amendment. But just if anybody was interested, we do have a sample mock-up of what the Lung Cancer Matters license plate would be. So I'd appreciate your support in these amendments as they both go to very worthy causes. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Questions on the floor amendment authored by the senator from the 52nd. Is there objection? Without objection, amendment number 1 is adopted. Now, does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection agreeing to Port Committee which fail pass the bill? Chairs none, Port Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? Chairs none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The questions on the pass of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. We already voted on the budget. Did good. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 53 and the nays are 0. And this bill, having received constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary will read House Bill 733.
House Bill 733, Representative Hightower, the 68th, and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 13 of Title 19 of the OCGA relating to family violence so as to add holdover provisions for appointees and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Special Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 17th. Present the bill. Please give the senator your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. House Bill 733 deals with the Georgia Commission on Family Violence, and the change was if a term expires for one of the board members, it will allow them to serve until their successor has been appointed. And Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield the way.
There are no questions. Oh, there is a question. Sorry, last minute question. Chair recognizes Senator 34th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I do.
Senator, can you tell me the normal time span for that appointee to be appointed?
The governor's office appoints that, and the reason they brought this up, there are 24 of them, their terms are going to expire this fall, and in case he didn't get around to it, they would serve until they get somebody appointed.
If the senator were further yield?
Yes.
So that means it could go into years?
I wouldn't think so.
So it's no time frame, or it's just open-ended?
Yes.
According to this legislation?
Yes.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 54th for a question.
Mr. President, will the senator yield?
Yes.
Isn't it true that members are appointed for a 3-year term?
Yes, that is true.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. President.
No further questions, Senator.
I yield the way.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection agreeing to Porter Committee which fail pass the bill? Chairs none, Porter Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? Chairs none, main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 0. This bill, having C-Rex constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary read some House bills to be assigned.
House Bill 1290 by Representative Mosby the 90th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend an act establishing in DeKalb County districts for which
Logo.
members. House Bill 1298 by Representative Ash of the 56th and others. Bill to be entitled an act
State
to
and
amend.
local governmental operations.
House Bill 1300 by Representative Pruitt of the 144th.
State and local governmental operations.
House Bill 1304 by Representative Carter of the 175th and others. Bill to be
State
entitled
and
an
local
act.
governmental operations.
With the order, Mr. President.
Secretary will read. Hold on. Secretary will read House Bill 954.
House Bill 954 by Representative McKillop of the 115th and others. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 5 of Chapter 2 of Title 16 of the OCGA relating to abortion so as to change certain provisions relating to criminal abortion and for other purposes. The Committee of the Senate Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Senate Health and Human Services Committee offers the following substitute to House Bill 954. Bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 5 of Chapter 12 of Title 16 of the OCGA relating to abortion so as to change certain provisions relating to criminal abortion and for other purposes. There is a minority report attached to the legislation.
Chair recognizes Senator on the 19th. Please give the Senator your attention as he presents the bill.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this is not an easy bill. It's not an easy bill for me to carry, and I have a lot of mixed emotions about the bill. But I'm carrying this bill on behalf of a constituency that can't speak for themselves. A few days ago, I made a speech to a group of Republicans, and one of the in the audience asked me this question. They said, "Why do you all pass so many bills?" I said, I'm afraid that we're going to continue to pass more, because the more vile we become as a nation, the more laws it takes to protect us from one another and from ourselves. If people were good and decent, we wouldn't need new laws. But the truth is, we're all bent toward evil, and apart from our faith in God, we are all hopeless. The law is a protection, but it doesn't change the heart. None of us are perfect. I hope you don't think my carrying this bill gives me any reason to think I'm better than you or your opinion's more important than mine. This is a difficult subject matter, and we all have to, in the end, vote our conscience. But we all break the law. How many of you have kept the law that we passed 2 years ago that we would not text while driving? We've got 3 that have not texted while driving. But we're lawmakers. We make the law. The law is meant to protect us from ourselves and from one another. It points out our weakness and a measure of the moral well-being of the nation. The more vile we become as a nation, the more law is needed. 50 years ago, no one would have considered abortion as an alternative at all. 50 years ago, my grandmother would not even say the word sex. I mean, that's how different things are today. Countries, including America, that have had spiritual awakenings in the past have found that they need less law because people have a desire to keep the law. To those who say we shouldn't legislate morality and we should not get involved in this, I would say we constantly legislate morality, and for good reason. Just look at the bills that we've passed this year, and one can see how important legislating a moral code can be. Just in the Atlanta Journal this morning, we're passing a law to encourage teachers not to cheat. Who would have thought that we would have needed a law like that? This is the third attempt at metal theft. We can't find a way to stop people from stealing. So we're going after the buyer. And enforcing these laws is becoming much more difficult. We passed a law this session on human trafficking of minors. Who would have ever thought in America and in Georgia that we would have needed a law to address the trafficking of little girls? We're passing sentencing reform, drug courts, spousal abuse. We passed a bill just maybe a few days ago that said the long-standing 200-year-old law that wouldn't require a woman or a husband to testify against their spouse, we're now saying, no, that's gone. When that law was established, I'm sure those that established it considered that the two became one and you couldn't divide the one. Now we're dividing the one. In fact, most marriages result in divorce. We passed a bill this session that dealt with so child molesters couldn't get CDL license. Well, folks, we legislate morality all the time, and we should. The question is, whose brand of morality are we going to legislate? I hope if you don't hear anything else, listen to this. You have been given the authority and the responsibility to make the law. You're lawmakers. I will tell you that your responsibility is as great as that responsibility that Moses possessed when he came down the mountain from Mount Sinai to give the Israelites the 10 Commandments while they were worshiping a golden calf. The law you create today will affect 10 million people. The law that Moses gave only affected 3 million people. It's extremely important that you get it right. The 10 Commandments weren't specific. They did not take into consideration the degrees of murder. We have first-degree murder and second-degree murder and self-defense and accidental death. There's not anything specific in the Scriptures about abortion because no one would have ever considered that you would take a child from the mother's womb. Only in modern times was such an act contemplated. There were those in biblical times that sacrificed their children. I remember I visited the city of Hatzor, an ancient city belonging to the Canaanites and the Amorites. When they excavated this city, which was several thousand years old, they found a little stone about so long that was an altar, and the purpose was to sacrifice children. And when we think about that, we say, how uncaring and out of touch could people be to sacrifice children? But we sacrifice children. We sacrifice children for not to propitiate the gods for a good crop, but for convenience and other reasons. Well, here we are today, determining what the law should be concerning the taking of a child at 20 weeks from a mother's womb. The decision is made more difficult by the knowledge that science brings us. We know what a baby looks like at 20 weeks. We know that the baby feels pain at 20 weeks. We see them sucking their thumbs and responding to stimuli. We also know, because of science, that they have abnormalities. You're the lawmakers. You're the lawmakers. Today you must decide whether the practice of abortion should continue after 20 weeks. Children can help us know the truth. They see things in a more pure vision. Their minds, children's minds, have not been corrupted by conflict or dilemma or evil or compromise or circumstance or callousness or just life in general. Our views are compromised when we've been through the tough things of life. I remember some years ago, the lieutenant governor was in the well speaking about on an issue of right and wrong, where he's talking about Opie and Andy, where Andy is teaching Opie the virtue of telling the truth. And he just bears upon Opie how you've got to tell the truth. And then Andy, when he was trying to sell his house, was fudging on the condition of the house. And Opie looks at Andy and says, but Pa, you're not telling the truth. Children can teach us the truth. I told the story in the well one day of my daughter. I took her down to the river where the Creek Indians used to live. And I said, baby, the Creek Indians used to be in vast number here, and here's how they lived, and here's what they did. And I said, and then she said, well, where did they go? I knew where they went. They went on the Trail of Tears. But I didn't tell her. I just said, well, it's a long story, baby, but somebody took them away. And she said, well, that wasn't very nice. And I said, no, it wasn't very nice. You know, kids can tell you the truth. Well, I thought about asking my daughter, who's 7 years old, what she thought about the taking of a 20-week-old child out of the womb of a mother and the process of doing that, to find out what her thoughts would be about that procedure and if she thought that was appropriate. But you know what? I couldn't bring myself to ask her that question. Why? Because I'm afraid it would have disturbed her. I'm afraid she would have said, Daddy, why do people do that? And I would not have had a good answer, except to say, we've let ourselves become oblivious to the fact that there are children that could be born in this world that are not allowed to be born. I guess one day she'll discover what's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, people believe the law. People believe the law. And whatever you make it, they will come to believe that that is right, whether it's a good law or a bad law. In 1972, 10% of the people believed that abortion was right and it ought to be legalized. 90% believed that it was wrong. But the court decided that it was right. So over the next 40 years, now 50% of the people believe that it's right because it's the law. The legislature back in 1972 could not have passed a bill like this. Not like this bill. They could have not legalized abortion in 72 because none of them would have gotten reelected because the people did not believe that this was right. But the justices decided it was right and it became the law. So I will tell you, whatever you make the law today, people will believe that it's right over time. House Bill 954 creates a legislative finding that there's substantial evidence that an unborn child is capable of experiencing pain by at least 20 weeks after fertilization. Moreover, the General Assembly asserts a compelling state interest in protecting the lives of unborn children from the stage at which substantial medical evidence indicates that they're capable of feeling pain. To that end, this bill prohibits abortion in cases which the probable gestation age of the unborn child has been determined to be 20 weeks or more, unless, and this is the unless, in reasonable medical judgment, the abortion is necessary for one of the two following reasons, and these are the reasons: to avert the death of the pregnant woman, or to avert serious risks of substantial and irreversible physical impairment to a major bodily function of the pregnant woman. What's not allowed is a claim of mental or emotional condition, or that the pregnant woman will harm herself. Does not satisfy this provision in the bill. The second thing is to preserve the life of the unborn. Then the bill goes on to talk about the method of securing the life of the child, which is, frankly, unless that manner of delivery would propose a greater risk to the mother or to her health. And then the balance of the bill deals with the reporting to the Department of Community Health and the confidentiality of the doctor and of the mother. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield the will.
You have several questions, Senator. You want to take them?
I will take some. There will be other speakers. I think the senator from the third will speak on constitutional issues, and I think the senator from the 45th is also coming to speak. So I'll take a few, and then.
All right, we'll give you. You cut it off when you get ready. Chair recognizes Senator 34th. Question.
Thank you. Will the senator yield?
I will.
Senator, thank you for bringing us up to date on the laws as they are written. Can you tell me the 7 deadly sins?
I probably couldn't quote them all, but I'm sure they're in code.
Can you tell me any of them?
Well, I'm sure that murder would be one of them.
And Senator, when you were discussing the bills, you brought up that murder as part of what you were talking about, and recognizing that murder is one of the 7 deadly sins. Tell me again what it was you were saying. It was a lot of noise going on, so I was trying to be clear on what you were saying when you mentioned murder.
I was talking about the 10 Commandments and the fact that abortion wasn't listed in the 10 Commandments, or it was not talked about in the Scripture, because no one would ever have contemplated doing such a thing. I wasn't comparing it to murder. I was saying that it was not listed as a prohibition because no one contemplated doing anything like that. Children were considered a blessing, and families were interested in having children.
Thank you, Senator, for that clarification. So it is, if you'll further yield.
I will.
Senator, having clarified that for me, and I appreciate you letting me know that, because you are absolutely right. We make laws, and that's what we are governed under. Would you agree with me, from my perspective, Dr. King, his whole movement was about changing laws, because back in the era when he marched, it was illegal to drink from the same water fountain. It was illegal to use the same restroom facilities. It was illegal to be served at the restaurants. It was illegal to do a lot of things. So that movement was basically to get laws changed. Would you agree with me, Senator?
Yes, and I think he did a great job in his effort.
Thank you, Senator. Now, based on
These
what
were
I was
law-
hearing
These were
you,
laws that needed to be changed.
you're exactly right. And we continue to try to make sure that we give every right to every individual up to and including women.
I agree with that.
Thank you, Senator. I saw you nodding your head. I just wanted to make sure I heard you as well as acknowledged you. Senator, will you further yield?
Yes, I will.
Senator, just yesterday at my home church, Antioch North, there was a sermon written or given about a cocoon and about this beautiful butterfly coming out of the cocoon too soon and couldn't fly. And they couldn't understand it, but it was because it was too early and nature had not run its course, and because the cocoon had been tampered with, that butterfly just could not reach its full potential. But had they had the onsight of knowing what was going on in the cocoon, then maybe differences or different things could have occurred. So I bring that up because it is so profound that we can now talk about what choices women have, yet we're saying with the modern sciences we have today that we need to either, if I'm hearing you correctly, go all the way based on nature regardless of what we know scientifically could be going on, and the fact that we as women are the only ones can make decisions with our doctors. It is unconscionable to me that I'm talking, he can do that, that we can continue to do, if the senator will continue to yield, and he made me lose my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
At any rate, yeah,
Take your time.
He's just rude, it's okay. All right, Senator, I'll just
Senator,
forget that.
I
Thank
think
you.
I follow where your question was going, and I would just say there in the bill, there's 140 days that a woman can make those decisions. It's only at 20 weeks, at the point that the child is capable of feeling pain, that we're saying that that's the point in time where you can't make that decision unless the life and substantial health of the mother is endangered.
One final question, Senator, if you'll yield.
I yield.
Today is 26th week, am I correct?
I'm not, I think that's the current law.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator.
Let me also say that this is 20 weeks from conception, not as calculated to be 22 weeks otherwise.
You brought up one last question, so you're saying conception versus what?
The beginning of the cycle, the last cycle before
A
pregnancy.
period.
Yes.
But period, only a woman knows that too, right? So how did the men realize when a
your
woman's last period?
You would, in consultation with your doctor, calculate that.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair recognizes Senator 10th for a question.
I yield.
Senator 10th, you have a question?
Working on the question.
Obviously not. Go ahead.
I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Senator from 3rd to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. The more we know, the more responsibility we have for what we know, and we all know that knowledge is a blessing, but it also demands a response. In a realm where science and medical discovery continue to open up more possibilities, our legal wisdom is continually being challenged to keep up with the growing body of medical knowledge. Nowhere is this more evident than in this very emotional battle about the unborn. Before 1973, destroying the unborn human life was a criminal offense in most states in this union. When the United States Supreme Court recognized a limited right to an abortion in the first trimester, Justice Blackmun, who wrote the decision, was careful to note that the court did not have all-seeing knowledge about future medical advances and acknowledged that some future advances could impact the holding of Roe. Medical science has in fact given us a view into the womb that was not possible in 1973. It has also given us the ability to save premature babies, even at the tender age of less than 22 weeks, something unheard of in 1973. As legislators, we should protect the most vulnerable members of our society, and I wish to present to you some reasons why we should confidently pass House Bill 954 today. My remarks will focus on Roe v. Wade in 1973, Planned Parenthood versus Casey in 1992, and the decision of Gonzalez versus Carhart in 2007. From these cases, we learned that, one, the United States Supreme Court established parameters for the regulation of abortion by the states. The court left open the possibility that medical knowledge could impact these parameters. 3, the court recognized that protecting unborn life is a legitimate state interest. And 4, the court recognized that there may be other valid state interests for regulating abortion. First, in Roe v. Wade itself, Justice Blackmun wrote, and I quote, "Some argue that the woman's right is absolute and that she is entitled to terminate her pregnancy at whatever time, in whatever way, and for whatever reason she alone chooses. With this, we do not agree. A state may properly assert important interest in safeguarding health, in maintaining medical standards, and in protecting potential life. At some point in pregnancy, these respective interests become sufficiently compelling to sustain regulation of the factors that govern the abortion decision. The privacy right involved, therefore, cannot be said to be absolute," end quote. In Roe, the court established a somewhat rigid trimester framework, which pretty much left abortion decisions solely to a woman and her doctor in the first trimester, which gave states the authority to regulate abortion in the second trimester, and gave states even more leeway in the third trimester to protect the potential life of a child. Even so, the court acknowledged the divergent views of when life should be protected. It declined to entertain the difficult question of when life begins, stating that at this point in the development of man's knowledge, it was not for the court to speculate as to the answer. The court then reviewed the history from the Stoics, who said life did not begin until live birth, to the common law, which recognized human life at quickening, to the modern belief that life begins at conception, and even recognized that medical advances such as implementation of embryos, artificial insemination, and even artificial wombs were starting to affect the debate. In essence, Roe recognized that advancing medical knowledge could eventually impact the legal parameters for regulating abortion. 19 years later, in Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey, the plurality set aside the rigid framework of Roe and recognized that the state has a legitimate interest in unborn human life at all stages of development, and recognized that the state may have other valid state interests that could impact abortion regulations. The court stated, and I quote, "The very notion that the state has a substantial interest in potential life leads to the conclusion that not all regulations must be deemed unwarranted. Not all burdens on the right to decide whether to terminate a pregnancy will be undue. In our view, the undue burden standard is the appropriate means for reconciling the state's interest in the woman's constitutionally protected liberty." In 2007, the Supreme Court made yet another ruling in response to the congressional passage of the partial birth abortion ban of 2003. In that ruling, Gonzalez versus Carhart, the court upheld the law, and as Casey had previously established, the court recognized an additional valid state interest, and in this instance, It was that the state had a legitimate interest in protecting the integrity and ethics of the medical profession. In addition, Gonzalez versus Carhart noted that the court had given state and federal legislatures wide discretion to pass legislation in areas where there's medical and scientific uncertainty. With regards to the current bill before us, House Bill 954 establishes that the state of Georgia has a valid state interest in protecting the developing child in the womb from any pain which results from the abortion procedure. This would establish a new state interest, but one that is valid under the rules of Casey and Gonzalez. These cases have clearly established that states and federal legislature has wide discretion to pass legislation in areas where there's medical and scientific uncertainty, and this is consistent with the state's interest in promoting respect for human life at all stages in pregnancy. Many in the medical community recognize that a child of 20 weeks after fertilization already possesses the physical capacity to feel pain, perhaps even more pain than a child who is just born. We're simply seeking to protect these children from that cruel procedure and painful procedure. This type of medical knowledge about fetal pain was not available in 1973. But with this knowledge, we have a duty to act, and we should always err on the side of eliminating unnecessary human pain and protecting innocent life. In one Supreme Court decision, Justice Kennedy described an often used abortion procedure this way: the fetus in many cases dies just as a human child, adult or child would. It bleeds to death as it is torn limb from limb. The fetus can be alive at the beginning of the dismemberment process and can survive for a time while its limbs are torn off. Fellow senators, this should not be the state of medicine in the 21st century. For those of you in agreement, but yet may be concerned that the viability issue could be a controlling factor, let me say this about your concern. First, we recognize that the Roe decision stated that with respect to the state's important legitimate interest in potential life, the compelling point is viability. In addition, I know that the Casey decision explained that an undue burden was a state regulation have the effect of placing a substantial obstacle in the path of a woman seeking an abortion of a non-viable fetus. However, we must recognize that one, the age of viability is moving towards a younger age. Even Roe v. Wade in 1973 recognized that this would happen. Justice Blackmun recognized that medical science generally placed the point of viability at 28 weeks, but he also wrote that it may occur at even 24 weeks. Well, we're now seeing that it is even earlier than that. Now, I have no knowledge of all premature babies born in the world who have survived, but I do know of Amelia Sanja Taylor, born in the United States in 2007 at 21 weeks and 6 days. She weighed only 10 ounces and survived to go home with her family. More recently, baby Frida, born in 2010 in Germany, was born at 21 weeks and 5 days and went home to be with her family. Keep in mind that the gestational age of 22 weeks is 20 weeks after fertilization, the time period which this legislation addresses. Thus, whether viability is needed or not, this legislation has a clear nexus with the viability standard and is not an issue that needs to be addressed separately in this bill. Secondly, the justices themselves have acknowledged that the viability standard is arbitrary. Even at the time that Roe v. Wade was decided, Justice Blackmun, the author of this decision, acknowledged in an internal Supreme Court memo now made public, and quote, "You will observe that I concluded that the end of the first trimester is critical. This is arbitrary, but perhaps any other point, such as quickening or viability, is equally arbitrary," end of quote. Justice White and Justice O'Connor, in later decisions, basically agreed with this position. But the decision is arbitrary because the court did not establish why the state's interest in protecting the unborn is connected to the ability of the premature baby to live outside of the womb. As Justice Blackmun noted, it could be any time after quickening. Well, if that is the case, then it is equally reasonable to consider that the standard should instead be at the time in fetal development when the unborn baby could feel pain. The Casey opinion also recognized that legislatures may draw lines which appear arbitrary without the necessity of offering a justification, but that the courts may not. Well, this legislature has an opportunity not only to draw a line, but to draw a line that is based on the most recent medical evidence. The point of this bill is that we can clearly and reasonably assume that the unborn child at 20 weeks would be subject to cruel and enormous pain during an abortion procedure, and it is our duty to protect the unborn child. Georgia will not be the first state to pass this legislation. It is already law in Nebraska, Alabama, Idaho, Kansas, and Oklahoma, and has faced no serious court challenge. As I previously explained, the legislation provides a nexus with a viability standard. The legislation is grounded in reasonable assumptions based on modern advances in medical knowledge and is not arbitrary. As the Gonzales Court held, we have wide discretion to pass legislation in areas where there's medical and scientific uncertainty and continued debate. The legislation is consistent with the state's interest in promoting respect for human life at all stages of pregnancy. And finally, the legislation recognizes that the preventing fetal pain resulting from the abortion is one of those other valid state interests protected by the Casey decision. So I ask you to please vote to approve House Bill 954. Thank you, Mr. President. Unless there are any questions, I'll yield.
Chair recognizes Senator 36th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Some of us were wondering if you'd repeat what you just said. It was very low volume and read in somewhat of a monotone.
Sure.
So
sorry.
I'm left a little bit
I'm
perplexed.
sorry, I didn't know you couldn't hear.
So if you'd care to illuminate us in your own words, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Well, basically, I said that this law is consistent with the federal law and with the standards which allow us to regulate abortion because, one, it is based, certainly it considers the interest of the state in protecting the life of the unborn. It's based on newly discovered medical evidence of that the unborn child can feel pain, and that certainly is a legitimate state interest in protecting the unborn from unnecessary pain.
If the Senator will further yield, isn't it
Yes.
true that we heard from esteemed doctors with collective years of experience, multiple decades, 40, 50, 60 years combined experience, testifying that all the studies show, and the Royal Academy, an esteemed source of information, shows that it is 28 weeks before the neural physiology is established in a fetus to feel pain. Isn't that true that we did hear those doctors testify to that in committee?
You heard that, but you also heard testimony to the contrary, that an unborn child can feel pain at 20 weeks, and you also heard evidence that the very study that you just referenced was biased and was influenced by other factors or other interests that sought to promote and protect abortion. So it's a matter of weighing.
Well, if you'll further yield, isn't it true that the author of the bill who's seeking passage of the legislation is the source of an opinion that the studies of the Royal Academy were biased. Isn't that true? That was the opinion of the author of the bill who's seeking to pass the bill. It's who's not a physician, last time I checked. Is that true?
No, he was not a physician,
Right.
but he certainly has the ability to review and criticize the study, and he did, and he presented opinion testimony that it was a biased decision. So.
And an opinion, isn't it true, and facts are two different things many times.
Well, you're
in these halls.
assuming, Senator, that that report was presenting facts rather than opinion, and that report also contained opinion of those who are preparing the report.
And isn't it true that the doctors that are licensed to practice medicine and deal with very advanced conditions that are perinatalists who specialize in tiny, tiny, tiny babies and in premature births, that they testified that they do not use any numbing when they perform procedures on infants under 28 weeks in the womb? Isn't that true? Isn't that testimony pretty gold standard testimony?
They presented that testimony, but again, there was testimony which indicated that the unborn child feels pain at 20 weeks. So, Senator, there was testimony that you referenced, but there's also testimony which is contrary to what you're stating, which confirms that the child at 20 weeks could feel pain.
Well, Senator, I think I'll agree with the medical experts that bring the national, international studies on that question. And since the whole bill is based on that premise, I think it casts a shadow over the entire enterprise. Thank you for yielding.
Chair recognizes Senator 42nd for a question.
Will Senator yield?
Yes.
Senator, you mentioned the Casey case by the United States Supreme Court and others affecting the federal law and the constitutionality of this bill. And my question is it not true that in all of those cases they have recognized that the health of the mother is a paramount concern? The pain, for example, of the mother is a paramount concern. Is that not true?
They recognize that, and they recognize the state's interest in protecting life. So.
And is there any justification in the federal law for a standard or an exception that requires substantial or irreversible impairment of a major bodily function?
I'm not aware of a standard such as that, but that is something that could be considered when weighing the state's interest in protecting unborn life. And that is clearly a legitimate state interest. And the court went on to recognize that there may be other interests that are legitimate as well when you're considering laws which are regulating or restricting abortion.
Will the senator further yield?
I do.
Is it not true that the Casey case itself said that it cannot be questioned that psychological well-being is a facet of the woman's health?
I'm sorry?
Is it not true that the Casey case itself, the United States Supreme Court, said that psychological well-being must be considered a facet of a woman's health?
It may have. I'm not familiar with that. But again, the court recognized that you're to weigh those interests with the interest of the state in protecting unborn life.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator 32nd for a question.
This is Senator Yield.
Yes.
Senator, isn't it also true that one of the reasons why physicians don't give these infants medication to ease the pain is not because they don't experience pain, but because medication itself may actually harm the child, and they're actually at this point trying to save the child, that some are actually choosing that you could abort at this stage of life?
You're correct, Senator.
Thank you.
Mr. President, unless there are any other questions, I'll yield.
Any other questions? I see none, Senator. Thank you. Chair would observe the House must not have a quorum over there. A quorum is moved over here. Chair recognizes the senator from 34th to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Dean and members of the Senate. I'd like to just start with unborn fetus. Unborn fetus. There's been a lot of talk so far on this bill, but I want to share one little thought that I heard that I thought was kind of interesting. A man shot a man, and the other man died. The shooter was arrested. When he went before the judge said, "How do you plead?" He said, "Not guilty." And the judge say, "Well, you told the officer you shot him." He said, "I did." He said, "And you're still wanting to plead not guilty?" He said, "Yes, I did shoot him, but if the Lord didn't want him to die, he wouldn't have died. I know a lot of people been shot that didn't die." So think about that for a minute. I'm going to leave you with that because that was kind of interesting to me. I want to share Anna's story. Anna and her husband decided to start a family. They were thrilled when they became pregnant. Anna said those few months were the happiest in her life. She knew they were having a boy, and they couldn't wait to have their anatomy ultrasound at 19 weeks to see the images of him. At the anatomy scan, they found out that there were no amniotic fluid, and the baby was hard to see. The doctor told them that there was no amniotic fluid because their son had bilateral renal agenesis, meaning his kidneys had never developed. He was also missing his stomach and bladder. The amniotic fluid is necessary for the development of the baby's lungs, and the absence of it leads to constellation of physical features known as Potter's syndrome. Because Anna's baby was not cushioned with the amniotic fluid, her organs pressed on the baby, causing physical deformities, including abnormal limbs, growth, and flattened facial features. Anna's baby had a fatal condition. If her son was to even survive the rest of the pregnancy, they were told he would die of respiratory failure as soon as he was born. Anna described the pain, the trauma, and the overwhelming sadness that she and her husband felt. They had spent years preparing for a family and months bonding with this baby. They wondered if he would be musically talented like his daddy or interested in science like Anna. They had planned his nursery. They were going to decorate it as a jungle. And they were buying their son dinosaur pajamas. Anna said there was no words to describe the heartbreak that occurred when you switch from planning for your baby's future to the reality that he cannot live. Anna and her husband had to make a decision. She and her husband weighed their options carefully. They considered continuing the pregnancy, but could not imagine how she could ever leave the house or face anyone knowing that their baby was going to die. She was scared to answer innocent questions about her pregnancy without breaking down. And she knew health-wise it was safer for her to terminate the pregnancy. Anna's husband stopped touching her stomach, trying to distance himself from his son and to ignore his own grief. Their deciding moment to terminate the pregnancy was when they realized that they didn't want their son's life to be spent in an environment that was so cramped that his body grew deformed and he could not move around, only to suffocate upon birth. Their son was not going to live regardless of when he was born. And as his parents, they felt compelled to consider the quality of his short life. This is Anna's message to the Senate here today. In her own words, and I quote, "Legislation restricting all pregnancies terminations after 20 weeks gestation, except when the mother's life is in danger, ignores the family where a fetus tragically received an adverse prenatal diagnosis. Many serious conditions are discovered at the anatomy ultrasound, which happens around that time, and it can take several weeks to get further testing, so it is not unusual for women to pass the 20-week mark before a final diagnosis is made. And importantly, sometimes is needed to make an informed decision regarding continuing or terminating the pregnancy. Carrying to term is not in the best interest of all women and their families for a variety of physical and mental health reasons. Additionally, carrying to term can mean that the fetus suffers for a longer period of time and has more traumatic death. I ask that you listen to Anna's story today. Consider what Anna and her husband went through. Consider their devastation. Ask yourself, if you look at can you look at Anna in the eye and say, I've decided that you must carry that baby to term and live for 4 or 5 months more knowing he will die? This is Anna's story. That's why I stand before you today to ask you to vote no on House Bill 954. No on House Bill 954. Vote no on House Bill 954. I'll yield the well unless there are questions.
No questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you.